Welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am Susan Polos, the President of the United States Board on Books for Young People, USBBY. USBBY is a nonprofit organization devoted to building bridges of international understanding through children's and young adult literature. USBBY is one of 85 sections of the International Board on Books for Young People, IBY. Patricia Forde is the current Children's Literature Laureate of Ireland. Mac Barnett is the United States National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. Leading these two very special authors in conversation today is Ellen Myrick, President of Publishers Spotlight and an Executive Board Member of USBBY. Without delay, I will now turn the program over to Ellen Myrick. Thank you so much, Ellen, Patricia, and Mac.
Thank you so much, Susan, and welcome to our Laureate Ambassador Chat featuring Patricia Forde and Mac Barnett. A few housekeeping details before we get started on the good stuff. Please note that this webinar is in listen-only mode, so please post any questions you may have in the chat, and we will address those at the end as time permits. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. Please post any tech-related questions there as well, and finally, we expect all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness, and anyone who does not follow this may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. So, now the reason we are all here. Patricia Forde is Ireland's Children's Literature Laureate, also known as Laureate na nÓg, and has written more than 20 books for children, including The Wordsmith, a winner of the coveted White Raven, The List, The Girl Who Fell to Earth, and most recently, Making It Up As You Go Along, that included contributions from past Irish children's laureates as well, encouraging children to write their own stories and fuel their creativity. Mac Barnett, the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature, has written more than 50 books and, with John Clausen, created a newsletter for adults about how picture books work. His books have won numerous awards, including 2 Caldecott Honors, and his forthcoming book, Make Believe Telling Stories to Children, dives into the wonder of children's books. We are delighted that these two literary giants have taken the time to join us today and let us know about the life of a laureate. And for the purposes of this conversation, we'll use ambassador and laureate synonymously. So welcome. Come and join Trish and Mac. Thank you so much. We're so excited you're here. So let's get started. Tell us about your journey to the role and how did the reality of being a laureate and ambassador match up to your expectations?
Trish, you want to start? I feel you've been doing this long. You've been doing this longer than I have. So seniority.
So you're trying to say is I'm nearly done. I've only we don't talk about that here, but I only have a few weeks. So it was lovely, a lovely journey. I am the 7th laureate na nÓg. So I had worked with some of the previous laureates on their projects. So I knew a little bit about it from the get-go. And in Ireland, well, the way it happened in my time was in November, I was told that I was shortlisted for the position. And you're asked at that point if you want your name to go forward. And I do remember somebody saying, be careful now, because if you say yes, the next call you get could be telling you that you are the laureate. So I did think and said, yeah, okay. But it was November, and I never asked when will they tell me. So I kind of forgot about it then. And also, to be absolutely honest, I didn't really think I would get it. You know, you're used to being shortlisted for things. And I kind of just thought, we'll see what happens. So in January, I had absolutely put it out of my head. I was on holidays with my husband and I got a phone call. And Elena, who is the CEO of Children's Books Ireland, who managed the laureate, was on the phone, which wouldn't be unusual. I know Elena well. So we were chatting about everything, the weather, what was going on. And then she said, I've just come from the laureate selection committee. I remember feeling like my heart just stopped. And she said, you are the 7th laureate. And I was so emotional, which I didn't expect at all. I thought I would laugh. I thought I would think that this is really good fun. But I was really emotional and really proud. So that was how I found out.
Yeah, I got a mysterious email from my publisher that said, like, we need to talk to you about an urgent matter. We've set an appointment for tomorrow at 11 a.m. And that's not how anything works in children's books. Like, if we're setting up a Zoom, that is 15 emails, coordinating schedules. This was just like, be there. And I was like, this is either really good news or really bad news. Like, I couldn't think of what the good news would be. So I thought I was going to just log in and just, they would say, Mac, your career is over. But no, I found out that I had been appointed National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. And then the next call was with Dr. Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress. This is a role Trish, you said it really well. I had the same thing. I was really emotional immediately. Like, I was overwhelmed. And I was also surprised how hard it hit me. I think that, I love children's books so much, and I think that in that moment I realized how much of my life just has revolved around telling stories to kids, and how it is, I think, the most important thing that I do. And I think that most of my satisfaction comes from the actual, like, making of the thing and the sharing of the thing with kids, my audience. And that is where I'm happiest. That is why I do this. And I'm pretty good at, like, not needing a ton of external validation outside of, like, the laughter of a bunch of elementary school kids. And so getting this, which is just like, it is pure external validation. It's this thing from the Library of Congress, right? Like, it actually was so meaningful. And this sign from people I knew in publishing and people I didn't, to just that recognized what I was doing and to say, keep going. It meant a ton.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as well, it made me feel kind of patriotic. I think, people like get to play football for their country, or, get to do stuff. I never thought as a writer that you'd ever kind of tog out for your country. And it was a really lovely feeling. And it has remained so. That idea that you have a role and you're doing something.
Yeah.
So let's talk about doing something, as you say. So what is the day-to-day life of a laureate and ambassador like? What are some things that happen in a typical day? Walk us through that.
So, when performing official ambassadorial duties, that here in the U.S. that involves 5 visits to communities across the country each year. It's a 2-year term. And so when I go there, I'm going into elementary schools, sometimes talking to older kids. I try to do an event in the evenings, or sometimes 2 events in the evenings for families, and also just adults, just a time for adults to talk about kids' books, how they work, and sharing them with kids. And then there's so much stuff just day to day. Like, when I'm home, I've been so surprised by the amount of emailing, interviews, and trying to write about trying to write about kids' books in this role, right? They're sort of, in the U.S., each ambassador is asked to have a specific focus, something they want to talk about in their 2-year term. And I'm focusing on the picture book as an art form. Part of that involves writing about picture books in sort of like a way that adults can access how these things work. So sitting at my desk, that's a lot of the time too, is writing or talking to adults about this great but sort of undervalued art form in kids' books.
Yeah, very similar, I'd say, on a much smaller scale, in that we are also asked to have a project when we come on. So my theme was making it up as you go along. Very much about people, I called it wild creativity for children, which, was something that wasn't to do with education or school or anything. It was just about being creative. And my project was to take, funny enough, I'd always felt, when I taught for 9 years, and when I was teaching, I thought all of the time, there's such a resource out there of children's writers and illustrators, which would really help schools and kids when it comes to enjoying books and reading books for pleasure. So I thought I'd bring those people together. So I took a bus, a gorgeous pink kind of a bubblegum bus from the top of Ireland on the west coast, from Malin all the way down to Mizzen, so right down along the west coast of Ireland. And we had about 36 writers and illustrators. We met about 3,000 children, and we went to schools and libraries and did all of that. So the days that I was doing the project, obviously we were on the bus and we were running in our schools and talking to kids and trying to get a kind of a carnival atmosphere going. I felt very strongly that we need to compete with all the other distractions. So I was trying to say to the kids, this is like the circus, this is really good fun. And we had that energy ourselves, I think, on the bus. We were very giddy by the time we got to the bus, we got to the kids. So it was lovely. I knew that if I brought a whole gang of writers and illustrators, they would supply the energy. There, you know, you can't put 3 or 4 of them together on a bus and not expect there to be lots of laughter and lots of fun. So we did that. So on a normal day, if I was doing a project like the tour or writing the book, then that was very different to going out and doing events in schools. And we went all over the place doing events in schools. But like Mac, I would say a lot of the time as well was spent, you know, writing stuff, writing forwards to things or speeches for things. I didn't really expect that, I think. There was a lot of that. But it was all good fun.
So let's talk about a not normal day. So can you look back and see a surprising thing that happened that just kind of like, oh, so this is part of it, or something that just kind of just came out of nowhere and changed the way you thought about it, or maybe inform future writing?
I think the the biggest surprise to me is there's like a big heavy medal with a red, white, and blue ribbon that you receive, which is great. It's sort of like, it is the award, it's the trophy portion, but then you are also contractually required to wear it whenever officially administering your ambassadorial duties. I'm semi-official this morning, so I have it nearby in case anybody comes and challenges me. But I felt I'm terrified when I go out. It'll be a very casual settings, and then I have to put it on, and I'm just terrified that people are just like, oh, Mac is really in love with that medal. Wow, he wears it. He's wearing it to the cafeteria. Wow, this guy. So just know, if you see it on in a picture, or if I'm just like hanging out at the beach, it's because I signed a contract.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I was told you were not going to be wearing it this morning.
I also have a medal. Excuse me.
Oh, that's really nice.
So,
oh, yeah, that has the little...
Children's Books Ireland saying they're going to have to put it in my contract that I wear.
I like yours. That's cool. This is this one.
Okay, it's bigger. Yours is a lot bigger.
Well, I really like your fastener. I really look at this. I gotta say, I'm always a little worried about that. I'm always a little worried about those rings. You've got the whatever that's called. Yeah.
I'll send you one. It looks like a safety pin, but I'll send you one.
I need one. We don't have that technology.
No, you're behind us in that.
Yes.
Now we need to hear about something that is surprising to you that is not about your medal.
Something surprising. Well, every the middle year of being the Laureate, our term is 3 years. So the middle year you go to Bologna, to the big book fair, and I was surprised about that you get as many of the international laureates as possible come, and they have conversations. And it was really interesting to hear how other people do it in their own country and what they're at. And also that they have the same kind of challenges everywhere, really. So that was kind of a surprise to me. But also, I suppose I was surprised at how much support there was. You know, there's a whole team. Ruth Nein is the manager of the Laureate Project, and she was always there to help me whatever I was doing. But there was a whole team from Children's Books Ireland as well. So that was incredible. You know yourself, you're used to doing everything yourself. You're used to booking the train and, you know, whatever it is, somebody holds your bag for you. You know, there's always somebody to take care of you, which is going to make it very difficult for me in 4 or 5 weeks' time. So I've warned my family that obviously they're going to have to step in, that I no longer get my own coffee. I don't do any of that stuff. But that was a huge surprise, because it does make it an enormous difference having a team of people who are working with you and are there to help you. That makes the whole thing a lot less daunting.
I feel like you just teased us a little bit there when you said that you talked to the other laureates and you found out what things were similar and different. Can you share anything from that, or is that just private laureate talk?
No, not at all. I think what we kind of talked most about was the sort of reading crisis everywhere, and the distractions of screens and how to maybe combat that. But also we talked a lot about the fact that childhood is short and the need is urgent. There's no good us figuring all this out in 5 years' time when Mac's 4-year-old will be 9.
Yeah.
You've wasted all that time then. So we did in Bologna feel there was a need for urgency, that this thing needs to be helped along now. And I'm not one of those people who think, that our children are in a terrible state when it comes to reading. Certainly not here in Ireland. I still think a lot of our kids are really into reading and are really positive about it. And even if they aren't, it takes very little to tip them over the edge. You can go in, you can talk them up fairly quickly. So all of that is really what we were talking about in Bologna, because that's kind of what was in the air at the time.
Mac, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I was just nodding my head so hard on that. I agree with everything Trish said. I mean, even going back to when you were talking about going around in the pink bus, I think that I really see it when you were like, it's our job to compete with all these other distractions. And I do think, like, as a writer, always, even before this role, like, as my job, it is to write for the world that exists, and it is incumbent upon us to make books that kids want to read, that they enjoy reading, and that, yes, compete with these other things. I'm a big believer in the book. I think that what we make does compete with those other things. And I was a kid, I will tell you, I watched a lot of TV, I played a lot of video games, and I read a lot of books. And a book is an incredible technology that can tell stories in ways these other forms can't. It can do things those other forms can't. We need to figure out what those things are. Trish, you were talking about fun. I could not agree more. Reading is for pleasure. It is for enjoyment. That is the only reason we do it. You will never lecture a kid or argue a kid or sloganeer a kid into reading a book. You do it by giving that kid a book that they want to read. And it is our job to make those books, and it is any adult who works with kids' job to get those books into kids' hands. I share an optimism too. I think that, like, there is a lot of dire reporting in the U.S. about the children's literacy crisis. And reading scores are slipping. The number of kids who read daily is falling. But I will say that the number of kids who read every day for pleasure is orders of magnitude higher than the number of adults who read for pleasure every day. There is a national reading crisis in which kids are faring far better than adults, but we're all slipping. And we're all slipping for a lot of the same reasons. Screens, phones, etc., all these things that we somehow just blame kids for. It's one of the worst habits of adulthood, is to blame children for our own failures. Adults aren't reading every day, but we expect kids to. Adults aren't reading out loud to kids, but expect kids to develop this habit. Adults are on their screens in front of kids. In fact, these devices are things that adults made to be maximally absorbing of human attention. And when adults hand these things to kids and they do exactly what we have designed them to do, we say, these kids love their screens. They don't care about books. If you spend time with kids, anybody who's around them daily, it's the same thing. They love books. They want to talk about them. They read for pleasure. They read in school and enjoy the books that are read to them or that they read with their classmates. They are talking about books constantly, and it is actually, there's a lot of responsibility, but the good news is there's a lot we can do as adults to make things better.
And sometimes one of the best things we can do, I feel, is get out of their way. I hear adults all the time who do not love reading, talking to their kids about reading, saying things like, oh, you'll fall behind in school, your friends are better readers, or don't read a graphic novel, that's for little ones, move on from the picture books. Get out of their way. They'll find their own way. Your job, I think, as an adult, is to supply them with the drug, get them addicted, and then lead them to it.
Yeah.
Books are the most addictive things
Yeah.
if you handle them correctly, I think.
That's right.
Getting a child who loves to read, they will be a reader forever.
Yeah.
But we do have to get out of their way. And I do think that a lot of our children still, rather, a lot of our adults confuse literacy with reading for pleasure.
Yes.
Literacy is breaking a code, knowing how to break down a word and what does it say. It has, in my opinion, almost nothing to do with storytelling.
That's
and
right.
I often say to kids in school, you know, if you're dyslexic, if you have trouble reading and writing, that has nothing to do with what I'm here about. That has nothing to do with storytelling. You can record your story into a phone. You can listen to an audiobook. You can look at a graphic novel. That's what I mean about getting out of their way.
Yeah.
We're really lucky. We have all these devices now. We have graphic novels and comics and great picture books that for children who are more visually inclined, then, you know, hooray, they have all of that at their disposal. As long as we're not there as gatekeepers saying, that's not as good as reading a novel. That personally drives me slightly mad.
Me too. I think that you know, when you do that, like if you say like, this book, when you say this book, right, like whether it's a form of book or just any, this book is not literature, this isn't real, well then there are two things, right? That kid's either going to think, well then I obviously don't care about books, I don't care about literature, and they will go off and find something else, or they will think that there's something wrong with them for loving this thing that is sub-literary or beneath our consideration. It's like it is heartbreaking to see, and you see it with graphic novels. You see it in the U.S. a lot with like adults rushing kids out of picture books. There's just like I that moment. It is one of the most heartbreaking things that you will see in a library or a bookstore is a kid run up to an adult so excited to read a book and to watch that adult say no.
Yeah, that's terrible. And you know, they talk as well about our children. I hear a lot of people saying, you know, oh, when we were young, we were very imaginative. You know, we did creative things. We're all born with imagination. To me, imagination on its own, that's something we all have. We can imagine things that aren't there. But creativity is channeling that imagination.
Yeah.
And that's what we should be helping them with, is channeling it. Whether that's, you know, relaxing with a story and being lost in another world, or writing a story, which I'm kind of keen on. I like them. I love working with children to make up their own stories. And I think, you know, children haven't changed at all. The world has changed around them, but they haven't changed.
Yeah.
Ken Robinson told a great story about a child drawing a picture in school, and the teacher said, "What are you drawing?" And the child said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher said, "Well, nobody knows what God looks like." And the child said, "They will in a minute." And, you know, it's our opinions and our notions that sometimes get in the way of their creativity, I think.
Yeah. I completely agree. And I think that, yeah, I would love to hear actually, Trish, a little bit more about you working with kids on writing. So before I was a full-time writer, I ran a nonprofit that taught writing to kids. And a lot of it was authors coming in and volunteering, editors, magazine journalists, right? Like, and everything was project-based. Everything was ended in, you know, if we had food reviewers come in to teach, we taught the kids how to review candy, and we made a food magazine at the end of it, and we would throw a magazine launch party, and they would read to each other, and that moment of getting up, you know, we would put milk in champagne glasses and have a release party, and when kids could get up and share the thing that they wrote with their peers and make them laugh or make them want to try this candy that they liked, like something clicked, right? That it was about human connection, that it wasn't about a set of rules that some adult 500 years ago had invented about what a story is or how a sentence works, but that this was about connection, that this was about a way to get an emotional response of back and forth with your peers. I tell kids all the time that it's like, you know, if you sit around at lunch and tell each other stories and tell each other jokes, that's what writing is. We've just figured out a way to get that into a book. But the more it feels like you are sitting across from me at lunch, the better I've done my job. So I spent a lot of time working on writing with kids. I don't do that as much now. I know that that's a focus of your book, and it sounds just like your life.
Yeah, I love all that. And when we did the book, I did it with Mary Murphy, who is a writer and an illustrator. Mary was supposed to just illustrate the book. But of course, we discussed everything. I think everything we both thought about writing went into that book in the end. So that was really good fun. But when I was doing the tour, I really wanted to experiment with immersive play as a way into writing. So, for example, with very small kids, when we were on the tour, like 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, I brought in a little suitcase full of tiny artifacts, like a suitcase this big, little artifacts, and got the kids to wonder who owned the suitcase. And we deducted from what was in it that it was owned by a fairy. And one of the little artifacts was a book, and it said How to Speak Human. So I would say to the kids, well, if they don't speak human, what do they speak? And I used to always make a point saying, I speak English, I speak Irish, I speak a bit of French, but I don't speak fairy. I don't get that. Yeah. And I'd say, oh no, it's fairy they speak. But without fail, a hand would go up. And I would say, I'd love to be able even just to say hello in fairy or goodbye, but I probably never will now. And a hand would go up and somebody would say, I speak fairy. And they would teach me how to say hello or whatever. But on the tour, we got to Sligo. No harm to Sligo. We got to Sligo and a little girl sang Happy Birthday in fairy. And it's that idea of immersion where they totally believe, and they're creating, not me. They're the ones who know how to speak fairy. Yeah. And then I go on from there, to talk about where fairies live and do they go to school. And I just hope that by doing that with them sometimes, that total kind of immersion play, that that whole suspension of disbelief and concentrating and focusing, we don't come out of that fairy world, we stay in it. Yeah. And I think it's a great way to start them on that voyage of discovery of reading.
I actually think that these are the things that even like we as adults, and I think we cultivate this through years of study and reading of capital L literature. But if I think about the habits or the sort of the orientation that I need when I'm engaging with a book, right? Curiosity, a sense of play, a sense of openness to new ways of telling stories, a keen sense of observation. These are all qualities that kids possess in far greater numbers and they're much better at it than we are as adults.
Do you ever notice that when they're playing themselves, the focus they have? Mm-hmm. You just have to say to them, you have to stay in this world now. They don't come out. If they're playing doctors in a hospital, they don't suddenly say, oh, I got a Barbie at Christmas. They're in that setting. And
it's a thing. I couldn't agree. And so that immersion and that commitment that you're talking about, I agree. This is one of the most interesting things to me about our audience, because it is so hard to even sort of metaphysically describe the state that they're in, where they both know that the thing is not real, that they know that they're not real doctors, but simultaneously they are 100% committed to the fact that they are doctors. They are in both worlds at once. And that is a very powerful thing to do, to be able to straddle that border. It is the way that you have new ideas. It is the way that you change. Kids can do that instantly. I'm really only able to get there when I am in love with a book or like completely enraptured by a painting. Art can get me there, but kids can do it on just asphalt, right? Like they can just be in a parking lot and they can do that. And that is what art asks us to do. Kids get there so naturally. So I have a book for adults about kids books coming out called Make Believe, and it is called that because that is, that's what kids call this, and I think it's such a beautiful term. They make themselves believe, and you talked about the willing suspension of disbelief from Coleridge, or poetic faith. These are beautiful terms, but like make believe is a term from childhood, and it is the same thing, right? Make believe, it is the willing suspension of disbelief. They are not being duped or just pretending. They are believing because they have chosen to believe, and that is what art asks us to do, and I think we can look to kids for how to do it.
Yeah, and they're not in any way fooled by it. They know it's make believe.
Yep, that's right.
You're saying it isn't, and they're saying it isn't. We all know it is.
Yes.
And when we finished that project, when the bus left, 2 days later, the kids got a letter from the fairy thanking them for returning the suitcase. Mm-hmm. And I remember a teacher sent me a text, and it said the letter arrived today, hook, line, and sinker. And you just think, it is in a way, but in another way, they know they're playing.
That's right.
We're the aliens. We've forgotten what it is to play. They know to be there and know at the same time that it's not real.
That's it. That is it. And I think that that's right. They are not being duped. They are engaging with this, with it's play. It is such a difficult thing to describe. And it is the most beautiful thing and natural thing to watch when you see kids doing it.
I think one of the first times it struck me about that immersion was when I heard you speak in Dublin. You spoke about the whale book and the little boy who was leaving the messages.
Yes.
Where Mac was saying you can adopt your own whale or own your own. And he was saying, hello, this is your owner.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there was a sort of a secret. There was a book I wrote. My first picture book was about a kid getting a blue whale as a pet. And underneath the jacket on the case, there were in small print there was an offer, a free blue whale offer, and kids could send in a self-addressed stamped envelope, and they would get sent back a whale. Was the promise. When kids would send in the envelope, instead they would receive a letter from a Norwegian law firm that said that their whale had been held up in Sognefjord, but that there was a photograph of the whale included and a phone number that you could call to leave a message for your whale. And when you would call, the outgoing message on the voicemail was just whale sounds and then a beep. And then kids would leave messages. And there was this one kid, Nico, who left over the course of 4 or 5 years, he left about 25 messages. And yeah, he would talk to this whale about his day. He would talk to his whale about his favorite grandmother and his second favorite grandmother. It was the most beautiful thing to watch. There was one time I wanted to send him a little something back, and so I was like, I need the mailing address. So I called the number, and his mom picked up, and I was like, hey, this is going to sound very strange, but my name is Mac Barnett. I wrote a book called Billy Twitters and His Blue Whale Problem. And she goes, oh, this is amazing. Nico is sitting right next to me. And I was like, no, don't tell him I'm on the phone. And she before I can even say it, she goes, Nico, it's the author of Billy Twitters. And I just hear the most bored, oh, he doesn't care about me. It's the book, it's the whale, it's the world that he has created. He actually didn't need my participation at all. He was taking care of it all himself. I had given him that initial little bit that he needed to go off and make an entire world. And I loved that. I think about that all the time. His utter lack of interest in the fact that I was calling his mom.
It's fantastic. The other thing about that book, if I remember correctly, I love kind of absurdism in picture books. And if I'm right, I think the first page has something about the mother says, if you don't tidy your room, I'm going to buy you a blue whale.
That's right.
Something like that.
That's it.
I just remember reading that and laughing out loud. I just thought, in no other piece of literature could you get away with saying that. People would say, what kind of a mother says that? I'm going to buy you a whale if you don't do it. Yes. So I think that as well, this kind of brings us on to picture books. I suppose, picture books give you such freedom to do stuff. And also because children are that kind of an audience. They will come with you. They'll go with you on the thing. And they won't ask too many questions.
That's right. And they're so alive to the absurdism of the world, right? They are noticing all the strange things. They're noticing all the arbitrariness and inconsistencies and beautiful things and odd things that we've become used to or deliberately ignore. They're noticing this stuff all the time. And I do think that the literature of the absurd has there's a reason that it is so prevalent in kids' books. They see how strange our world is.
Yeah. And they probably don't really know at that point that it's not unusual for a mother. Right. They just think that's somebody else's mother. My mom says if you don't pick up your toys, you're not getting your comic this week. Their mother says, I'm going to buy you a blue whale.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's that, isn't it? It's that lack of experience of the world that leaves it all wide open to us.
Yes.
Because they don't know. And you can say what you want. Really. Yeah. But I don't know about you, but I know when I'm writing, my favorite part is the world building bit. I love imagining the whole world. Most of that world won't end up in the book, but it's in my head. I know what's going on there. And when I'm working with children, I often find that's the thing that they really enjoy the most. Doing a map.
I was going to say making the map. Yeah.
It's like a magic power. You're saying to them, you can invent the whole world. I remember the first time that really struck me was when I read The Hobbit when I was a child. I remember reading The Hobbit and thinking, oh, people can just make up stuff.
Yep.
They can make up a whole world.
Yep.
We can do that.
Wow. So I was going to ask you, how do you, what are some strategies to get kids to engage with reading? But I think you answered that just now with how to talk human and how to making maps and all those wonderful things. Let's talk about humor. All right. We talked a little bit about absurdity already, but your books, both of you are just masters of having humor be part of the fundamental fabric of your stories. How do you do that? And how do you find the things that kids are going to find funny? So talk a little bit about that, if you would, please.
I could not put myself in Mac Barnett's gang on this question. Mac Barnett is the funniest man on the planet, I think, myself. But it's I'd love to hear, Mac, about how you approach humor, because it's a hard thing to talk about, isn't it?
It's really hard to talk about, and I think that it starts from just like liking to tell jokes and wanting that reaction from people. And to me, it is the way that I've always related to people, that I've been able to talk about stuff, that I've made new friends. It's a habit. It's a way of being in the world. And so I think it shows up in my books. I think that it's also, I don't know. It's a way to know that it's working for me too. You can hear when an audience thinks something is funny. You can see it. But an interested audience and a bored audience without jokes can kind of look the same, just sort of like sitting there, leaning, looking. So it's another way to check in with my audience and confirm, like, are we all on the same page? Are we all feeling this? In terms of how to do it, I don't know. I think that like the thing that has helped me the most is just that I've spent, since I started writing, a lot of time in schools reading picture books, both mine and other people's, out loud to kids. And I know that rhythm. I know what is required. I know what it feels like to lose a bunch of kindergartners in a book. And so when I'm sitting at home, I have these internalized rhythms. I'm always thinking both of reading out loud myself to these kids, but also that is what I am asking other people to do, that I am asking teachers, librarians, babysitters, parents, grandparents to read this thing. And if I'm wrong, they'll be sitting there embarrassed and I'll just be safe at home. So in that moment, there is sort of like an ethical obligation to just be like, let's make this work for them. Let's give them that feeling of getting a kid to laugh, because it's such a great feeling. And how can I create something that is sort of this portable comedy routine that gives that to them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people underestimate as well what goes into a picture book. So much of humor is about timing.
Yes.
And in picture books, that's often the page turn.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to do that scaffolding when you're writing a book of keeping them and kind of a promise to them that when you turn the page, there's a good chance they're going to get a surprise or a laugh or something.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I think but I do think it's hard to talk about humor, and you kind of half afraid if you looked at it too closely, you'd stop being able to be funny at all. Because
I think that's right. I definitely feel that way. I was thinking, I think just generally, like, I don't know if you feel this, Trish, but like writing for kids, one of the big tricks of it for me generally is like, you have to care about the stuff you're writing about. You have to be interested. You are writing across this gulf, this chasm between adulthood and childhood, and it's real. We lead different lives. We experience the world in different ways. Our brains work differently. We know different things. We know things that children don't, and we have forgotten things that they still know. And so figuring out how to do that, we need to find this area of common interest. And if you are writing about something that you are interested as an adult, but the kids don't care about, well, you've made a boring book. And if you're writing about something that you think kids are interested in, but you don't care about it, it's going to come off as patronizing. That adult who's just like, we'll put a horse in it because you love horses. So you have to be invested. And I think that that's even more true with humor. I don't think that you can be funny. You can't tell a joke and get a laugh if you don't think that joke is funny. You have to believe in it, you know? And that's where it comes from first, is just like real interest, authentic belief that the stuff is funny.
But you know yourself, the funniest people I've met, the funniest jokes I've heard, and the funniest lines I've heard, I've often been in a pub.
Yes.
Beside somebody, and they'll say, let me tell you, and you know, you just know you're in for a good story. You know they're going to say something funny.
When some of the funny, like, truly, when I came to Dublin for that talk, some of the funniest jokes I've ever heard in my life were in the pub that night. I think about them all the time. I talk about them with my wife. Yeah.
It's a huge responsibility here, Mac, for to ensure, for the sake of the tourism board, that foreigners coming into pubs will sit beside people who are able to tell a good story and tell a joke. We're training them up now. That's what to do.
Yes.
But I do believe that. I think people are inherently funny. It's just harder sometimes to translate that into a book, which is a static thing. And imagine if, you know, the fellow beside you in the pub has to tell you the same joke over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the picture book demands that it'll be read. If they like it, they'll read it every night for a month.
Yeah.
It better be still funny at the end of it, you know. But I sometimes think too, if I can create a character that I find funny, the rest of it will come. But sometimes it's that thing of just finding a human or an animal or whatever it is, but it is a human no matter what way we portray it. You know, that is funny. That there's something funny about them. Either of themselves they're funny, or the way they see the world is funny.
Yes.
So we're getting close on time, and I do want to ask one question, Trish, which is unique to you. You write in 2 languages.
I write in Irish and I write in English. I mostly write picture books in Irish, but I've written a couple of middle grades recently in Irish as well. So I've been doing that forever. I was bilingual from when I was about four, I suppose. I went to an all-Irish school. And growing up, I just always kept in touch with the language. So where I live here in Galway on the west, in the west of Ireland, we're still lucky enough. A lot of people right near us here would still speak Irish every day in their ordinary lives. And I worked for Irish language television doing children's programs. So I have a lot of friends now with whom I've only ever spoken in Irish to. So I'm lucky to have that. But people often ask, you know, how do you know whether a story is going to be in one language or the other? And there is a kind of an alchemy about it. I have no idea. But when it comes to me, the story, I know immediately what language it's in. And that could be something to do with the limitations of both languages. So, you know, there are certain things in Irish that will be more easily expressed or more uniquely expressed maybe than in English, and vice versa. You know, there are things in the English world that won't work as well in the Irish language. So so I do both.
That's amazing. And one thing that you both do, which I think is fairly uncommon in the children's book world, is you both have TV series that you work on. So that's almost like writing in 2 languages as well. Do you want to speak to that for just a moment? Shape Island, and then I cannot pronounce the name of your show in Irish, Trish.
I've written a couple of them. But Mac, talk to us about your one.
We had John Clausen and I have a series of 3 picture books about shapes with eyes. That we turned into a show. These are it was a stop motion show, so those are some of the puppets, the maquettes from the show behind me. And it was I think that it. I was talking earlier about a kid who watched TV. I think that just as art is possible in television for adults, the same is true in television for children. And so our challenge there was how to preserve the soul of the show, how to make it really funny and a little mysterious and preserve some ambiguity and some respect for children's attention and intellect in a world that doesn't always think of their audience that way in kids television, same you could say for kids publishing too. It was really that was a big part of the challenge. I think that writing for a new form is always interesting. How do we make these lines for actors? Which gets to the other wild thing. You know, when John and I make a book together, there's an editor, there's a designer, but it's a small team of people making it. And making a show is hundreds of people, and you're just trying to give everybody sort of get everybody in the same spirit, so they want to make something that feels the same way.
Yeah, when I'm doing television, from the very first thing I ever did, I have it here somewhere. There's a book on the making of Sesame Street, which is my Bible. I loved Sesame Street always, but I have the book. I don't know if you know it. It's the Children's Television Workshop brought it out, and it's a book for adults. It's about 30 years old or more. And I absolutely hang on to every word in it.
Trish, how are we just getting to this? I am like, my friends all hate how much I want to talk about Sesame Street all the time. They make fun of me. I am absolutely obsessed. I know that book. I have like the first handbook that they had with like what they wanted to teach from it, which I can send to you if you don't have it. I think that early stuff, Sesame Street from like 69 to like 86, is some of the best television that was ever made, and it managed to be both like explicitly educational. It was didactic in the sense that they were trying to teach kids to read and count, and also the funniest, the best sketch writing, and some of the like truly like deeply complicated ideas about what it means to be a neighborhood and live next to other people who want different things from the way from the things you want, but you manage to be neighbors together. It's an incredible
that
show.
they were so good at talking about what they did in that book. You know, just the passion describing exactly. Like, I think the very first thing they did when they started the program was they hired a guy whose background was making ads, and they said to him, make an ad of the alphabet, sell us the alphabet.
Yes.
Just their thinking, the way they went about it, and then to be able to write about how you did it. I don't know about you, anything I've ever done in my life, you know, I never wrote a thing down, I never took a photograph of it, so I wouldn't remember. If you asked me in 6 months' time, I couldn't tell you how that started. But they can write about how the thought came to them, how they developed it, you know, incredible.
It's incredible. I know. Their thing about advertising there, I think about it even when we were talking about what kids are going through now, right? They watched how much kids were watching commercials, singing jingles, and they were like, you know what? We need to use that language, those quick cuts, that editing, and we're going to use it for numbers and letters. And it was such a brilliant insight.
Instead of running away from it and saying, oh no, television is going to ruin us all, they're never going to read a book again. They took it on. They said, if they can do that with an ad, we can do that with the alphabet. We can do that.
Yeah.
Well, that was incredible. The meeting of the minds. Everybody in the chat wants to know, what is the name of this book again?
Oh, talk amongst yourselves. I'll find it. I have it here.
Okay. So while Trish is grabbing that book for the people who are watching, let's talk about what advice you would give to the next laureate, next ambassador. What is a lesson? Oh, there we go. Children and television. Lessons from
Children and television, lessons from Sesame Street.
Okay.
Gorgeous thing. It's got
with
like
Bernie
really,
on the cover. Okay. Thanks. All right. So things you would communicate to your successor in that.
Oh, Trish, start with you. You're gonna have better. You're gonna do better on this than I am.
Well, I wouldn't presume to give them any advice. I think whoever comes next, we've had the 6 before me were all fantastic, all totally different, and did their own thing, and the next one will as well. I think I'm really proud of our country, that they see children's literature as worthy enough to have a laureate. So I think that's a huge privilege. I take that as a stamp of approval from our country for children's literature, and I think that's hugely important. I think, you know, our job as ambassadors to obviously to encourage children to read, but also to raise the profile of children's literature and to defend it and be an advocate for it. You know, the amount of people who will say, you know, when will you write a book? When will you write a proper book? When will you? We actually do a series here called Proper Book, where we do panels advising people about how to write for children, and we call it Proper Book. Because, you know, to overcome those things and to not just be an ambassador that helps children to get involved with books, but an ambassador for the form itself, for children's literature as a canon of literature, to be taken seriously, to be given media time, to be given money to do live events with kids, all of that. I think if I wouldn't advise anybody what to do, but I think it's an important part of what we do.
I'm not going to top that. We got to let Trish have the last word there. That's it. Yeah.
Anything worth reading by children is worth reading by adults.
Absolutely.
Right? So picture books. Grown-ups can read them too, right?
Absolutely. I mean, picture books are, like, in a lot of cases, a grown-up is required to read them out loud. And that is one of the most beautiful things about them. It's sort of an automatic book club, a shared art experience, a place where kids and adults come together over the same story. I do think, though, the focus has to be the kid. You cannot be writing for the adult who has the money and is in the bookshop. You know, I will say, like, I am creatively and I think, like, just sort of, like, ethically interested in entertaining both kids and adults. But when there is tension between the world of childhood and the world of adulthood, it is the children's writer's job to take the child's side. And that needs to happen in picture books and anything else. Ultimately, we are writing for the kid first, and if we can bring the adult along, there's a lot of good that comes from that. But we cannot be writing for to flatter adults or an adult's sort of imaginary idea of what a kid is or should be. We are not making tools that are useful for adults to get kids to behave better or learn math problems, and so. Yes, there is. We are writing about what it means to be a human, and so there is, and there is plenty of there that adults and kids can come together on. But being a kid, a particular kind of human, is different from being an adult, and it is our job to write for them, whether adults like it or not.
Yeah, and meet them where they are. Yep. You know.
Okay, well, that's a beautiful place for us to transition to question time. We've just kind of sailed right on past that. Whooshing sound was our 45-minute deadline, but that's okay. We have a few questions here, and one of them was leaving room for the illustrator. So when you're writing a picture book, how do you leave room for the illustrator to do their magic?
I think that the picture book, you know, one of the fundamental engine of it is this dance between words and pictures and this complicated relationship, this tension between them even. You don't want redundancy. You don't want words and pictures telling you the same thing. It's exciting when they're giving you different pieces of information that you have to reconcile. And it's exciting when those things can be a little different, that there's difficulty in reconciling them, where there's some disparity between words and pictures, because that's true of language, right? Language imperfectly maps onto the world that we experience and sense every day. And that disparity is in there in the picture book. I think the picture book, all art is about giving up control at some point. You put it out for an audience to make something of it. A picture book, you give up control very early. And I, when I am writing, I'm looking to leave places for the pictures to do the storytelling, to create a mood or to deliver the punchline of a joke. Sometimes that involves writing, and I try to write very spare art notes. I think of it like playwriting. There are playwrights who dictate, you know, where the side table needs to be on the set. And there are playwrights who tell you very little. And in my experience, actors and directors and set designers have a lot more fun staging the plays of playwrights who give them freedom. And I try to do the same thing when I'm creating a picture book manuscript.
Yeah, and I think it's I don't know about you, Mac, but one of the last picture books I wrote, Letters to a Monster, I said in it, they spent the night chasing zingabobs about the trees. And I purposely didn't say anything about what zingabobs were. Yep. So Sarah Warburton, wonderful illustrator, who did it. I was so excited when, you know, when they send you the first sketches and to see what does the thingamabob look like.
Yeah.
She had done a fantastic job. But I love the surprise you get if you're the writer and it goes out to an illustrator. Like, I've never got a shock. It's always been a really good surprise.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they can see into your head, but they develop it out. You know, they then create the world visually, which is just incredible. And that's why I think the only way you can leave room for them is to be conscious. I'm never conscious of the first draft, but after that, I'm conscious of, you know, what they're going to do.
Zingabobs is a great example too. Like the way that works when you were a kid, right? Like you hear that word, it is not explained in the text, and so it provokes your interest, and you lean forward and you look somewhere else to close the loop, and you find it there in the illustration. You go, okay, and you check it out, and that level of attention, of involvement, of reconciling streams of information coming in different ways. It's an electric way to write. It's an electric way to hear a story too.
I'd love to know what that feeling for a small child is when you're reading to them and you can see them. They're studying the illustration. Yes. What's going on in their head? Are they hearing you only, or are they concocting things themselves? I don't know. But that kind of fascinates me because you're reading to them and they're scrutinizing the illustration.
Yes.
Well, I think... Oh, go ahead, please.
No, you go, Ellen.
Well, I was just going to say we're getting towards the end of our time. So do you all have a final thought you would like to leave with our attendees today?
If I could just say, I'm just so delighted to have got the chance to speak to Mac. I'm a huge fan. I'll say it now, Ellen, at the end. I was going to cover it up and be very cool. But I'm a huge fan of his. I think he's amazing. I think America is so lucky to have him as their huge long title ambassador.
It is so.
What I would say, Ellen, is I think there should be some kind of a law made that he has to come to Ireland regularly and entertain us.
I'll be back soon. Let's get together, tell some jokes, tell some stories. Trish, I love your work too, and just sort of like, I don't know, this feeling of coming together, to know somebody's books and love them, but then to have a conversation where these fundamental axiomatic things that feel so deep to why I write, to hear them like come out of your mouth before I have a chance to say them, or sometimes to hear them and think like, God, I think the same thing and I've never even explicitly had it as a thought. It's one of the most exciting things about talking to other writers, and it happened to me so many times in this conversation. It really, it's just, I feel so lucky to be making books at the same time as you are, because I think that we're all pulling in the same direction.
Well, thank you so much to Trish Forde and Mac Barnett for joining us. Thanks to USBBY for hosting this event. We'll be sending out the link to the recording in a few days. And in the meantime, just keep reading to kids every chance you get and sharing books with kids.
Thanks to Ellen and Christina and Susan and everyone else.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.